Awesome. Thank you. I am back with another coach on Coach's Corner. And today I'm joined by Hannah Williams. Thank you for joining me, giving up your time
Thank you.
today to come and chat to me on here. Before, I suppose, I get into it, I know, well, you're a coach, you work online. Is it mainly online, or do you work in
Yep.
person as well?
No, mainly online, yeah.
Mainly online. Cool. Probably easier to maybe give us a little bit of a background or an introduction to who you are, what you do,
Sure.
rather than me doing it.
Sure. So I mean, I used to work fully in person. I was a, full-time personal trainer at studios. And then COVID hit and the gym shut down. I already had been coaching nutrition sort of as like a side hustle. But when the gym shut down, it was sort of my opportunity to launch right into online coaching, which was kind of a blessing in disguise for me. So now I am fully online coaching nutrition, as well as like a monthly training membership for my clients as well, for coaching. So I don't really see anybody in person anymore, which was a huge shift for me. But now it's allowing me to grow in ways that I never thought that I never would have been able to, working one-on-one in person.
It's great.
Yeah.
How long have you been in the coaching space for?
I started coaching in 2013 or 2012, so just over 10 years now, including the in-person work. So,
Nice.
but yeah, it's longer than I thought. The past 4 years have sort of flown by.
Crazy, isn't it? I feel like
Yeah.
that the COVID times kind of sped everything up, and it was like
Big time. And also, like, in addition to that, like COVID, was such a blur, but also like that was the time when I was making a complete 180 in my business. I was building a business, growing it, like finding out like a whole different method of like income. Like I went from steady income to nothing at all and then having to build that back. And I'm not 22 years old. I'm in my 40s and, I have a home, no secondary income. Like this was like a do or die moment of like, I need to make it work. So yeah, the whole COVID time was an interesting moment in life that, yeah, it's sort of, it's flown by.
I think so many examples of that being like what happened in that time period, because it did, like you say, some people didn't have a choice, so they're like, well, I need to make this work. And for others, it was like some of the best times to actually grow a business was during those times when there's obviously not great things happening, and then people are actually thriving throughout it, which I find fascinating as well.
Yeah. I mean, the online coaching business like thrived during that time because gyms were shut down. People wanted to focus on themselves. I think a lot of times, people in the beginning of COVID were just like going wild with their nutrition and drinking a lot and like doing all these things. And then after the first 6 months or so, they realized maybe this isn't a sustainable approach to life. And so then they started to realize that they had to do something, but gyms were still shut down. Things were still hard to go out and do in person. So the online space sort of was able to take off. And I'm thankful that I had the guidance and mentorship that I did, to get into this space when I did.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, it's good. We'll dig into that because that'll be interesting to find out how you approached that and the things you did. You just gave me major flashbacks of like a random Tuesday afternoon. Does
that trigger you a little bit?
Cracking open a beer, thinking like, I don't normally drink in a week, but why not?
So I was the same way, and then so I on Christmas of 2020. I started dry January and I've been sober ever since, but I credit that to that first year of COVID of being like, I can't do this anymore. Like this cannot be how it is. So COVID has sort of shifted a lot of things in my life, but sobriety was one of them. But I don't know that I could have done it without those first 6-8 months of COVID, like being a little rough.
Crazy.
Cool.
So tell me about your coaching. Like who do you work with? What is it you do?
Yeah, so I work primarily with, I mean, it sounds very cliche because everybody does, but usually busy moms. They're usually people that come to me, people who have tried all of the other things. I tend to take a much more mindset, habit-based behavior change approach to my coaching. So I do coach, flexible dieting and macros, but it has to be a much more zoomed out approach to it. So we work with a lot of like daily non-negotiables. We do a lot of like small changes. And if and when macros are a part of that, then they will become part of our program. But it's really about how to figure out how we are currently approaching our nutrition choices and how do we actually want to, what's going to help us thrive, what's going to help us feel our best. So it's a much slower approach, but the clients that I've worked with that have trusted the process of these slow baby steps have seen massive success and just like feeling like, oh, well, I've lost this weight and I feel fantastic and I'm lifting heavy, but I don't feel like I've done anything different. And then they look back at all of the changes that they've made. But because it's so small and steady, they've been able to incorporate and weave this into their life on a daily basis without much shift in what they're doing.
So and is it mainly based around like a nutrition aspect, or did you train with them? Or?
Yeah, so I do primarily nutrition. So I do one-on-one coaching. I'm working on a bigger scale group coaching process, which is sort of why Apotheo came into my life. But I also do a monthly training membership that is available to all my one-on-one clients, as well as anybody else who wants to join, which is like a 4-week coaching program based in progressive overload. So I haven't completely stepped away from the personal training aspect of things, but I'd say about 80% of my business is nutrition at this point.
Yeah. Oh, good. And in terms of Apotheo, like you mentioned it there, how did you find it initially?
Well, so like actually found it. I had met Jacob from Macros First at a live workshop that I was in this past summer. And I had heard of Apotheo. It was sort of kept popping up on my Instagram, like, hey, like those targeted ads that were just like, this will probably help you. And I was like, I'm fine. And then I met Jacob and he was talking about how Macros First integrate so well with Apotheo. I had recently just started transitioning my one-on-one clients over to Macros First from the other big tracking app, which will remain nameless. But I started shifting people over to Macros First because I was using it and I loved it. And so then I was speaking to a couple of colleagues of mine who had shifted to Apotheo, and they were just like, you've got to try it. So I did the test run, like the free trial. And within like 20 minutes, I booked the call with Adam to talk through the details. And then within a week, I was onboarding all of my current clients into Apotheo because it just seemed like the right move for me. At that point in my business, I was working on scaling back my one-on-ones to make space for this bigger project that I'm sort of leading into. And it was sort of the right opportunity for me to say, like, what is working and what isn't. And I think as I built my business through COVID, I was sort of like adding these systems that I needed at the time. And I built it to a place where like everything worked for me, like everything was smooth and it worked for me. And I think once I started to really look at it, it was like everything was connected in this series, like this web of zaps. And it always gave me this anxiety of like, if one zap broke, it was just like a panic of like, where is it? How do I fix it? Because it's sort of like everything else crumbled. And when I looked at it from the client's perspective, like they were going through 3, 4, 5 different systems for their check-ins. And, while they were all doing great, it was still a struggle for adherence to like get them to do all of the things because they were in email. They were in, a chat app. They were in Google Sheets for their check-in. They were in, the main tracking app for their macros. They were doing all of the things. And so when I found Apotheo, I'm just like, this is putting everything in one place. Why was I so resistant to those IG ads when it was targeting me? And I just sort of jumped right in, and my clients have been so excited and like open to this shift, which is not always the case when you make like a big sweeping change with clients. But it's just been such an amazing change in my business.
That's cool to hear that.
Yeah.
In terms of the story behind getting into it, obviously me and Jacob, and then end up here. It's probably a good insight for Adam. If you, I know he watched it back. Maybe change the ads. You need to put more stuff in it to tell people.
No, I'm just really stubborn. I'm like, I've got this. It's working. But like, it was one of those moments where I think because I run my business all by myself, like I don't have a VA, I don't have much support anywhere in my business. It's just me. I was sort of like white knuckle gripping all of the systems that I had. I'm like, it's working. Nothing's broken. Just hang on tight and keep going. So, and I think that for a lot of newer coaches, and while I've been in the industry for a while, I was new to running my business. I was new to online coaching. When you find something that works, the fear of like, if I change it, what if everything falls apart? So I was kind of just white knuckle gripping the systems that I had because they worked for me right now. And I was just nervous to make the change. I knew that I had to, but there were a couple other systems out there, but the price was just absurd. So Apotheo just made so much sense for me, especially since I was scaling back on my one-on-ones. The price just made sense too, because I wasn't going to have 50, 60 clients. I was trying to scale back to 10 to 20 clients max from my one-on-one. And so the price worked, the system worked, the ease of use on my end and the client's end worked. And like I said, I mean, from a financial perspective, I cut down 6 or 7 different systems that I was using all into Apotheo. So, and now that I say it, now that I like repeat these things over and over, and I've talked to Adam about this as well, I'm just like, I'm an idiot. Like, why haven't I done this sooner? I was wasting money, I was wasting time and energy when everything could just be in one place. And so it's just sort of saved me a lot of time and energy and anxiety with his apps.
That's good. Did you use something before Apotheo? Was there like a software you used before?
Am I allowed to name names?
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I used Honeybook as like my CRM. I used Mighty Networks to host like a community and all the resources. I used Sign Now for agreements, Jotform for applications. I used Loom and Voxer for messaging.
Yeah.
So really all of those things were combined into one. And of course I still use Loom, but like before I was sending them an independent link in an email or like into their Google Sheet. Oh, and Google Sheets, into their Google Sheet check-in. But now it's like every single one of those is now inside Apotheo. And so it just makes everything easier for me. Check-ins that used to take 40 minutes going from one thing to the next is now a 15-minute check-in, 20-minute check-in. Trying to find conversations with clients that I've had. Like, is it in Voxer? Is it in email? Is it like in my DM? Like, where is the conversation? What were we talking about? Even just like the scheduling and Calendly, having it right there in the page. It all just makes so much more sense as to why this was the right move. Because why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't it be? So yeah, there were a lot of systems that I'm now just like, goodbye.
So that like the main reason for then choosing Across was just because you had so many things going on, and then
that was one of them. And I work with Eve Guzman, who runs Macro Mentorship, which is how I was connected with Jacob from Apotheo, from Macros First. But I'm the head coach in her macro mentorship course. So we work with 75 coaches per cohort 3 times a year. So I'm constantly talking about all of these systems. I'm constantly coaching on like how to, simplify, how to streamline your business. And I'm like, why am I not listening to my own advice? And so, within Macro Mentorship, I had created a Google check-in sheet that was free to everyone as a template. And that works. It's fantastic. But I think it works until you're ready to take that next step. It works until you're ready to really grow and develop your business into something that feels more like a business. And like I said before, I think I'm just a little bit stubborn in, admitting that I had held on to a system that was not working for me. It's hard to admit that like you're wrong, that you need to change. But yeah, so now Eve and I have both used Apotheo for some time now. Well, sometime since this past fall. And now this is something that we advocate for the coaches who are ready to streamline their business within Macro Mentorship. Because it makes everything easier to find, easier to use.
Yeah.
just better.
Good that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I a similar experience from going from Google Sheets and then actually getting to a point where I was like, I can't manage any more on this now. It's
Yeah.
getting really complicated. So that's when I moved over to Apotheo, and it was like, wow, this is how it's supposed to feel now.
Yeah.
How did you find like moving your clients across, the transition across?
Way easier than I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to get a lot of pushback from the clients. I thought it was going to be this logistical nightmare with, shifting them over there with payments. And it literally took an afternoon. Like, again, I don't know why. Like, I think in my head, I always expect worst case scenarios. Like, and I think the trauma of like setting up all the Zapiers from system to system before has like made me feel like all of these things should be harder than they are. But it literally took me an afternoon. I sent out an email to all my clients saying, hey, this is what we're going to be doing. I promise you it's a positive change. It might take a little while to get used to it. But I had a beta client who's a friend of mine go through like the trial with me for like a couple of weeks just so I could get the kinks out of the system. So when it was time to move all of my clients over, it was just seamless. And I've linked their Google Sheet that they used to use into their account in Apotheo. So like they can go back and look at it if they want to for any reason. But yeah, I mean, everyone seems to have enjoyed the shift. They like that now, because before I used to do like feedback within the Google Sheet and it was just this big block of text. Like there was no formatting. It was really hard to read. So they like the format of the check-in. They like how they can easily see last week. They like how they can easily see all the data from their Aura Ring or from their tracker. They like how the Loom video is like embedded into it. All of it just feels more clear to the client as far as, the feedback that I'm providing, the stats that they're giving. They love that they don't need to enter in their freaking macros manually into their sheet, because for a lot of these clients, they shifted to macros first when they shifted to Apotheo or like a couple weeks prior. So
Yeah.
they didn't have like they had been using MyFitnessPal and like every day of every week for months on end. Just and I'm like,
Uh,
oh, like looking back, like I can't. I look back at that and I'm like, thank you for staying with me for as long as you did doing what you were doing, because
that's I
it was
think
a lot of manual work for them.
yeah,
And it shouldn't be. Like the changes that clients are making and how hard that can be mentally, emotionally, physically, like all of the things that they're doing,
yeah,
they're creating full life changes. And the last thing that I want is to make that harder for them
yeah,
by making like the check-ins feel like it's going to be an hour and a half of their time just to enter in the information that they've already entered in. Like for people new to tracking, one of their biggest gripes with tracking is like it takes so long, or like it takes time, or like it's so much work. So the last thing I want is for them to feel like they're doing that twice just to get the information from me. So yeah, the integration with macros first is just being able to see the log right there. Um,
yeah,
yeah, I look back and it makes me kind of cringe a little bit,
yeah. That
but it was
that
part of the growing process. It's like,
yeah. I feel like most coaches have gone through that kind of process.
yeah,
Like, okay, now this is how, and then something else will change. Like, oh, right, this makes it easier.
yeah,
But that whole duplication of work is something that I resonate with massively. Obviously, getting clients to do that, and then that's enough to put people off actually,
yeah,
sending the information because they're like, I'm not doing this.
yeah. Yeah, I actually had a couple clients come back to me that I had worked with about a year and a half ago. I reached out to a couple clients. I'm like, hey, we're using a new system. And the reason why they left is partially because they were really busy. They felt like they didn't have time. And I don't think that the check-in was like the
Yeah,
reason, but I know it wasn't helping. And so I reached out to a couple clients that I had worked with before that I knew could make some crazy progress, that like I knew really wanted it. And I offered them like a little discount, like come back, like I've shifted, my systems, and now they're back. And it's like, it's still hard to make the changes, but this makes it easier to relay that information to me, which makes everything feel a little bit easier.
Mm.
So,
Yeah, it makes sense.
yeah,
Great.
yeah,
Yeah. Funny on that, like years ago, I used to work. I worked with a coach, and he used Google Sheets, and I would meticulously every Sunday like go and type in all my data, and it used to take me about an hour, and I used to
yeah.
sit there and do it, and I wouldn't do that now, but
No,
at the
no,
time it
yeah,
was
it's that like, oh,
yeah, it was really important to me because I was like, well, I'm
yeah.
doing this for a reason. But most people just go, no, sod that, I'm not doing it.
Yeah. And it's also that feeling that I think a lot of people, especially post COVID, have gotten into this idea that like we don't have to always be putting in the extra effort. Like we can we can get that information across and not have to not have to feel like I'm packing my day full of things. Not that I'm working so much harder. Like working harder with this particular example doesn't necessarily mean that I'm getting better results. Like spending an hour and a half on my check-in doesn't mean I care more. It doesn't mean I'm working harder. It just means that that check-in is taking an hour and a half. Like it just means that maybe that check-in is inefficient for the data that you're trying to provide. So like we don't have to spend that much time doing the thing if you can do this exact same thing in 15 minutes. Like the only thing my clients are really filling out in their check-in forms is that series of questions. And that's it.
Yeah,
And it's
makes sense.
like, that's all they should be filling out. Like that's the only thing that can't be automatically generated is like their thoughts, feelings, like experiences over the past week. Like that's the only thing that can't be automatically generated. And for a lot of my clients, they'll do like some of those things throughout the week because it'll automatically save. So like they're filling that stuff in as it's happening. Like I look for challenges and wins throughout the week. So instead of saving it all for the end of the week where they're trying to remember, these little wins that have impacted their life that I think a lot of times by the end of the week, we just kind of forget those things.
Yeah,
So they're going into their check-in and like filling it out and it'll automatically save. So it's still there when they go to actually submit at the end of the week, which I think has been helpful for them. Because I think a lot of times by the end of the week, they're like, oh, this week was just so hard. Like, well, it can't have all been that hard. Like, surely there were a couple of things that like were not terrible this week, but it's hard to remember them. It's hard to pull those forward. So
yeah, I think that's a great point to bring up, just for anyone watching it back, in terms of getting people to potentially do that throughout the week and take a moment to do it, because
yeah,
it's good for them, but also, like you say, at the end there are things that did happen potentially like they've not remembered. So
yeah,
it's a good point.
and just like keeping the notes like next to the nutrition, like next to the day's macros. Like they'll like put comments in about like why they were maybe under or like why they went over that they might forget like later on. So
Mm.
being able to like in real time keep tabs on those things easily, again, because it's not going into Google Sheets, finding the week, finding like this it's right there where it should be to fill out and provide that information. So
Yeah, agreed. How do you find like onboarding new clients into Apotheo?
it basically does itself, right? Like my link to the application is in my Instagram, it's in my email like signature. So the process just kind of happens on its own. I that that's it. I mean, it's easy. I don't have to think about it, right? Like it's not this like yeah, it happens.
Yeah,
It's easy. And I like how there's, different stages where I can edit the emails if I need to. Um, but yeah, it's simple. And sometimes I'm like, I feel like maybe I'm missing something because it's too easy, but I think that's how it's supposed to be. It comes back to what we were just saying is like we expect for things to be harder. Like it should be more work.
yeah.
I don't
Always
think I'm
thinking
missing
about
something.
like what else can I add to this? What more do I need to add?
Yeah,
I'm like, no. Sometimes you just
you
need to
don't need
take
to.
stuff away. Like just
Yes. Yes. That is like the goal ever since like this past fall when I shifted to Apotheo. It just sort of like opened my eyes in my business as far as like, what am I doing that I don't have to be doing? What is like too extra for like what my clients need or for what my business needs? Like I had spent over the years, like I've spent so much time creating so much for my clients that they weren't even going to look at. Like I had like a 50-page like intro to macro. I don't think anybody looked past page 3. Like, it was all great information, but like I spent so much time thinking that like the more I put out there, the more that I did, the better I would be as a coach, or the better my business would be. But my business has thrived the more I step back and the more I scale back and see like it's not about what I know or what that, like how much I'm doing. It's what am I doing that works for me and my business and my clients. And since I've been able to do that, like I just feel more like clarity in my business. I feel more connected to it and to my clients. I feel like I have a better balance of like life because I'm not spending hours building resources that like nobody will use, or finding like more complicated programs that like I should be doing because then I'll look more like like I've been a coach for over 10 years. Like I am good at my job. I am qualified. I don't need to prove myself with working until I'm completely burnt out. Like that is not what I preach in my business. Like in my business to my clients, I preach how can we say no to more things? Like how can we scale back and find things that help us feel our best and, actually thrive in life. And I again was not listening to my own advice, and I was making things much harder for myself. And now I'm not. I'm
Yeah.
One of my friends said like I'm cocooning. It's not that I'm like blocking everyone else out, but I'm not letting that energy in that's not going to help me grow and thrive. I'm
Yeah.
just only good things that's going to help me become the version of me that I need to be for me and my business.
Yeah, it's like we wear some of those things like a badge of honor, like burnout, and
Mm,
you know, resources are seen as this. I've got 100, 300 resources. I'm like, well, that's like,
nobody's looking at them. Nobody has opened them.
so yeah, it's interesting
Yeah.
to go into that and go like, what's really important, like you mentioned, is like your business, you, and how you affect the clients, and like
Yeah.
just strip that back. So yeah,
Yeah. The resources were a big one. It was sort of like a dagger to the heart when I realized like nobody cared. Nobody cared. I mean, like, and part of it was just like, yeah, different formats, different methods. I mean, a lot of the things, like even like in Apotheo, you can do those message of the days. So I've been taking tidbits of my resources and using them as like little daily notes, and they see them every single time. And I'm like, oh, that's easy. Like,
yeah.
I don't need to spend hours creating. I feel like owning a business is about all of these, like, palm to face moments of like, why?
It's
Why
good that
didn't I know this sooner?
you're still getting the use out of them though, because you can go like that
Of
for years.
course. Of course. Oh, I have like 20 years of content based on that 150-page manual. Like it's there.
Good.
But
Ah, um, and then I just wanted to ask about like, I mean, we've probably touched on it a little bit in terms of the aspects that has changed, but in terms of how Apotheo impacted your business, and then how that had an impact on, I suppose, your lifestyle, was there anything that you noticed, or any big changes that happened there?
I mean, like I was saying, I mean, I think that it was just sort of the first step in me taking a look at how I run the rest of my business, right? Like when I was able to let go of how I was running my business and start using Apotheo, that was like, it in itself was a game changer for me and my clients and my business. But outside of that, it allowed me to just sort of say, I'm not using this, get rid of it. Not this, get rid of it. Like it's allowed me to just start shedding parts of my business that like weren't working for me, or to like allow myself to say, I don't always need to be trying to create the next thing. Like, what if I just nurture and make the things that I'm doing better for my clients and my prospective clients? Like, it's not like Apotheo did that, but my choice to use Apotheo sort of opened my eyes to saying, like, well, what else am I like holding too tight onto in my business? And so I think, this past year and hopefully going forward into 2024 is just kind of like, my year to expand by scaling back. And I think that, as a relatively new business owner, I mean, 2020 to now, 2021, 22, it was like hanging onto a roller coaster, right? Like, this is working, like hoping you don't fall off, right? And then around 2023, like, I started to really think about who I was as a coach, what I wanted my business to stand for, how I was putting myself out there. And so I think like that started that mental shift. And when Apotheo came around, it sort of allowed me to just start releasing things. And it's weird to say that like a system like helps me do that, but it just sort of like took the weight off of me to say like it doesn't have to be that hard. It doesn't have to be that much time and energy and work, because there is this thing that will do it all for you.
Hmm.
It's yeah, I mean, it's kind of an interesting progression now that I look back at like how the business has sort of come to where it is right now. But yeah, meeting Jacob was sort of like a huge part of that. Macros First was a huge part of that. A good friend of mine, Marcy Nevin, uses Apotheo, and she and I were talking about it. And so once I started using it, it just sort of, I stopped caring about like the image of what I was supposed to look like as an online coach, or like what I was supposed to be creating as an online coach, and just
It's not. It's a
simplifying.
great way, yeah, thinking about it, because then that's
Yeah.
giving you the ability to look at things clearer,
Yeah.
and then you can only come at things properly when you've got clarity, like, and you're coming at it from a place of like serenity, not like chaos.
Yeah.
Because if there's too many things going,
When I tell you, I was like, I had this like need to create the next group program or create the next opportunity for my clients. And I think like part of why they never really took off the way I wanted them to is because a part of me was like so nervous about setting up all of like the connections and the zaps and the workflows, like all the things, that like part of me would hold back a little bit on it, which makes sense. I'm not traumatized. I feel like it sounds like I'm traumatized by Zapier, and I'm not, but like maybe a little bit.
it can get that way
It's just
sometimes.
like this big spider web sometimes. Like, it's like this talks to this and that and this. And
yeah, nightmares. What's on the horizon for you? What's that? I know you said about big project. Are you allowed to talk about that, or is it
Yeah.
secret?
Well, I mean, it's still in the works. Very much like in the beginning stages. So I'm working on one of the things that I wanted to start doing more of as I scale back in my one-on-ones, and really lean more into working with macro mentorship. And we have like a business mentorship alongside that. Is I wanted to create something that was a lower ticket offer for my client base, because one-on-one coaching is a huge investment. And for a lot of the people that I work with, that can be a barrier. So I wanted to be able to create something longer term that sort of mirrors what I do in one-on-one, but for a much lower price point, that still has a community, that still has, weekly contact going out. So it'll be much more like habit based. It'll be much more behavior change related, but we'll still touch on movement, nutrition, all that sort of stuff. So the details are still very much in the works, but we're looking at like a 3-month program, potentially a 6-month option, to sort of work on those things more independently, but still with communication and community. So I'm very excited about it. My goal is to not overthink it, to not like overcomplicate it, but to just create something really, really special for the people that, I do want to be able to work with, that right now one-on-one for me and for them might not just be an option. Cause like I said, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm doing this alone, and I don't want 50 clients. I don't want 100 clients. I want 15, 20 dream clients. And I want to work with 100 clients in a group setting, right? Like I want to have at a lower ticket option, right? I want the one-on-one to be very high touch, very, customized, and give a lot of other people the opportunity to be able to benefit from that sort of stuff, but maybe not for the price point that one-on-one gives.
Yeah, that's exciting.
I mean, we fingers crossed. Again, the goal going every single step of the way is like, don't overthink it, don't overcomplicate it, don't overthink it, don't overcomplicate it. Just repeating in my brain.
Yeah, no, exciting
Yeah.
to see how it unfolds. It'll be interesting,
Yeah.
man.
We'll
It's good,
see. I think, at some point in 2024 that's rolling out, but the planning started end of December, but then vacation and COVID hit. So we haven't gotten too far except for like the basic framework of what it's going to look like. And then
yeah,
we say we, but it's
it's you.
we. Me and all of like the anxieties in my head about how this is going to play out. That's the we,
I know
the
it sounds
collective.
good though. Like, it sounds like you've got the understanding of like why you want to create it, which is a big thing,
Yeah.
and then who
Yeah.
it's going to be for. So
Yeah.
good.
We'll see.
Um, if people want to find out a little bit more about you and they want to see what you do, where's best for them to go?
On Instagram. So you can follow me at HannahJ28. So HANNAHJ28 is where I do, that's my main platform. And then link in bio will get you access to anything. I do a weekly Monday email that goes out. That's everything fitness, mindset, nutrition, Q&A, all the things, no spamming. So yeah, those are the two ways.
Thank you.
Thank
Amazing. No,
you.
thank you for giving your time there. Really
No, well, thank you so
enjoyed
much for
it.
having me.
I will. Let me just stop this because otherwise I'll forget, and then it's